There have been some macro-level changes, and I think everyone wants to know about them, because a lot of people don't really pay attention to this. We've talked about running a business before, but because of the situation in China and around the world, things are changing really fast. Yesterday, you went to watch a video by Ma Guanyuan, and honestly, it was really well done. So this is an era of big cycles. When it comes to cycle theory, I suggest everyone start with the first book. The first tip is a book by Howard Marks called Mastering the Market Cycle. If you have time, you should really read this book carefully. By understanding cycles, you can actually grasp what the future holds, what has happened, what is happening now, and what will happen next. Howard Marks is actually a master investor. Every year, he writes a memo to investors, and over the years, he has compiled these memos into books. Besides this one called Mastering the Market Cycle, which I personally think is quite well written. Although the language isn't particularly elegant, the logic is solid. I think this first book is worth reading. Why do I emphasize cycles? Because cycles are very important. I think there are many kinds of cycles. Everyone knows about the smaller cycles, like the kitchen cycle, which is about inventory, the inventory cycle. Then there are larger cycles, like the Hublar cycle, which refers to the general economic production cycle. There are also other cycles, like the Kondratiev cycle, which is said to last 60 or 70 years per round. It describes the major cycles in human economic development that arise from changes in productive relationships. All of these are very important. These economic cycles, including what we call economic booms, recessions, stability, and recoveries, the smaller cycles, are all governed within these larger cycles. So you need to look at this yourselves. I think this is quite important. Only by understanding these cycles can you roughly know where our lives and careers stand in the world, in this economic development environment. Of course, there are also political cycles, and besides economic cycles, our lives have cycles too, because your vitality has a cycle, and products have cycles as well. So once you understand all these cycles, you'll know what kind of actions you should take next, whether to go with the flow or go against it. I think this is very important, so make sure to read Howard Marks' book carefully. So, the second point, really studying the second book is, in my opinion, crucial. I think you all can probably finish reading these books within this year, and after you do, they'll be really helpful to you. So, what are the first and second books? Well, I think the first is by a famous Taiwanese economist, the chief economist of Nomura Securities, named Richard Koo. He wrote a book called The Holy Grail of Macroeconomics. It's about the balance sheet recession. This book isn't new. He actually wrote it back in the 1990s. This person is a descendant of the Koo family from Taiwan, but he's now a Japanese citizen. There's a chance that this research might win the Nobel Prize in Economics in the future. I think he could be the first person of Chinese descent to independently win the Nobel Prize in Economics. He explained why Japan fell into a 30-year-long recession after entering the bubble economy in the 1990s. But do you know what Japan's situation is like today? Just a couple of days ago, I got back from Japan, and right now, Japan's stock market is at its highest point in years. Even Buffett sold off all his shares in American financial companies and came to the Japanese market to buy stocks in the 5 major trading houses. And now, Japan's housing prices are also gradually returning to their historical highs. After nearly 30 years, since the bubble burst in 1990, and with Abenomics coming into play in 2005, Japan went through 15 years of recession and 30 years of recovery, what we call a balance sheet recession, and now Japan has returned to its historical peak. Japan's economic fundamentals are extremely strong, so you'll see that Japan's national income, per capita GDP, disposable income, and the level of development of its commercial society are all very high. That's why you can understand why Japan's stock market, bond market, and real estate sector have made a comeback. Japan really suffered a severe downturn. You have to understand, compared to the 1980s, Japan's housing prices basically dropped by more than 2/3, and the economy went into a major recession at that time. It was even worse than the economic downturns in the United States in 1929 and 1933, and even surpassed global economic recessions. But the fact that Japan was able to climb out of this quagmire is something truly worth our study and learning from.